Bonnie lassie, will ye gang and shear wi' me the hale day lang? It's a ancient Scottish folk song, one of my favourites. It's the only Scottish folk song that I know. I know Irish folk music. I don't know much Scottish folk music. It's called Band o' Shearers. It's an innocent innocent song about love, and using the opportunity to go together to shear sheep, to initiate love. He sings to her, Bonnie lassie, will you gang and shear wi' me the hale day lang? It's beautiful. There's a good version by the Clydesiders. Now, enough of that. Can you all hear me? I am not well, and I don't mean mentally. That's a permanent issue. I mean physically, I'm not well. But I have ideas, thoughts, concepts, notions, predictions that I wish to share with you. Good. Some of these things are challenging, and I think it's very easy for people to become provoked, especially in the online spaces, where for some people becoming provoked and righteously indignant is something of a pastime, and the world does seem, from my limited perspective, to becoming a little more confrontational and grumpy and cranky. So in order to deal with these issues that I know people find challenging and triggering, I will try to remain in a half meditative state whilst we approach this. So I'll try to remain present. If you've ever made content, if you've ever written anything, even if you wrote a song or you made a YouTube video or you did a piece of art, it's very hard not to speak to your detractors. It's very hard not to speak to your enemies within the work, within the sort of you, to speak to the sources of your frustration. And that can make the content that we produce confrontational, because you're sort of speaking to your imagined detractors. It's quite an unconscious thing that everybody does. You become, I don't know, traumatized, let's say, or hurt. We don't need to use trauma for everything. We say hurt. And then you speak from that place. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's not good. I watched a Rick and Morty episode. I did. And I like Rick and Morty very much. It's very well written. And they do a lot of meta stuff about the writing process within Rick and Morty. And they said when you're making a writing decision, the choice is either joyful or joyless. And I thought, wow, that is profound. Narcissism. Let's start here. Narcissism and helping people. Let's start with the first controversial, potentially triggering topic. There is I'm sorry to those of you familiar with my work that I'm repeating myself there, and there needs to be a much stronger distinction drawn between narcissistic traits and narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder, to me, my dear ones, it's up for grabs. It's up for grabs. You're allowed to say this. You don't need a PhD in order to say this. You can have a mere degree in psychology, as I do, and you can make your opinion public, and then people can say, oh, that sounds like nonsense, or they can say, oh, that sounds useful, and move forward from there. I think we have to draw stronger distinctions from my a position of meager credentials. Not being credentialed doesn't mean you're not qualified, by the way. There's a difference between credentials and competencies. A person could be very, very highly credentialed, but not very competent. Some of you have had therapists like that. And then you could have somebody like my therapist who's incredibly competent, but he doesn't feel himself to be particularly credentialed, but he's very competent. And I think that makes him qualified. In my not credentialed opinion, Narcissistic personality disorder needs to be clearly distinguished from a person with highly pronounced narcissistic traits, even if that person is very, very, very difficult and very obnoxious. If they only have highly pronounced narcissistic traits, there is no reason whatsoever that therapy won't work. None. None. If the person has narcissistic personality disorder, there is no reason whatsoever to think that therapy would work. None. This is binary. It is not fluid. It is binary. This is my humble opinion. It is not Schrodinger's narcissist. If they have narcissistic personality disorder, I put my left hand here. In narcissistic personality disorder, a very strong structure has been developed over years that is a fortress against reality. Its predominant function is to help the person, the vulnerable child, deny and keep reality at bay. People with highly pronounced narcissistic traits, maybe just raised in an environment where they were spoiled too much, given too much, told that they were wonderful, told that they were special. But the reason why these people can be reached and these cannot is because these still have a bridge to reality. Please listen to me carefully. This is where things become potentially controversial or triggering, or people start to get very upset. The human being who has highly pronounced narcissistic traits has a bridge to reality, and the bridge works. And they want a bridge to reality. They want reality. They want feedback. They're not ready to abandon humanity in favor for a narcissistic delusion, no matter how good it makes them feel, because they're not ready to be isolated. They're not ready to be alone. They're not ready to bear the burden and cost of that. And so they will go to therapy. And in therapy, you must tell the therapist the truth. In fact, Carl Jung said, the main objective of therapy is for the therapist to lead the client to truth. The person with narcissistic personality disorder, their entire structure since, I'm saying childhood, let me say infancy, probably since before they were 5 years old, was developed to help them in one objective, the key objective. So this is where we get into stuff that is not orthodoxy, it's mine. It's mine. And so if it's stupid and non-functional, you can just write it off. You could just say, this guy, Richard Grannon, he's an idiot. And you just write it off. It's not psychology's fault that if I'm saying something that is wrong, it's not orthodoxy. That the predominant function of narcissistic personality disorder has a function, and its predominant function is to deny reality. The orthodoxy of psychology, excuse me, for those of you who weren't with me in the beginning, I'm not particularly well, not just not mentally well, but physically. The orthodoxy would say, no, it's there to help them deal with intense feelings of shame. Yes, it's there to help them deal with intense feelings of shame. But priority number one of the structure, which has a purpose, we repeat as a good Adlerian. So if we are good Adlerians, as in Alfred Adler, the forgotten third member of the Holy Trinity of Jung and Freud is Alfred Adler. The personality disorder has a function. What is its function? Orthodox psychology says it is to moderate shame. If the predominant function of narcissistic personality disorder was only to moderate intense feelings of shame, therapy would work. Therapy does not work because orthodox psychology, not all psychologists, but the thick end of the wedge of orthodox psychology is wrong. That's not the predominant function. The predominant function is to protect the child and the vulnerable child part of the narcissistic personality disordered individual from reality. So the first order, the first thing the narcissistic personality disordered individual must do is say no. It is one long, resounding, echoing no that echoes throughout their entire lifetime. Yes, even until they're dead. Yes, even if they experience tragedy, if they enter a war zone, if they're thrown into a gulag, if their spouse or children die, or whatever tragedy is there, it won't reach them. It won't reach the authentic parts of them because they've learned to protect the authentic parts of them by saying no. Behind the no is a shield wall. The shield wall is a fantasy. So people don't like this because that means I'm saying, is there really no hope for narcissistic personality disordered people? And why do you keep distinguishing between NPD and narcissist? Because, excuse me, I think it's COVID or perhaps Ebola. Because it's confusing people, and even very qualified, very credentialed people in the online space use NPD and narcissist interchangeably. And okay, I know what they mean. I know what they mean, but I also know that their followers don't. This is why I claim there's no hope for therapy to reach NPD. I didn't say there's no hope for people with NPD. Give them to me. Sign away their human rights. Let them enter the mind control gulag. Give them to me for 3 or 4 years. And let's see what we can do with them. Because all darkly humorous irony aside, there probably is hope for them, but not within the paradigms of normal psychotherapy. Sorry for those of you with me for a long time, it's a little boring. I'll move into new territory in a moment because you've heard this before. Normal psychotherapy is not a sharp implement. That doesn't mean it's not good. I am in therapy right now. It feels like having a superpower. It is wonderful. It provides so much relief and gives me so much more potency. Thank you. My therapist likes that word. He says, I am potent. And I say, yes, you are. You are my therapist and you are potent. Transactional analysis term. The therapeutic process as it is once a week, 2 consenting adults sitting in a room and having a conversation together with the naive assumption that the client is telling the truth and really just wants to get better, and the therapist is telling the truth and really just wants to help the client get better. That's a very non-nuanced description of what psychotherapy is. There is far more going on there, of course, and there are so many ways that it can go wrong. It's frankly astounding it ever goes right. The skill of doing psychotherapy probably needs to be taught before you ever even show up. Never mind psychotherapy, counseling, therapy, any form, in any format, you know, it takes skill. It takes quite a lot of knowledge, and you must put your ego to one side, but more on ego in a moment. So the narcissistic personality disordered individual, first of all, isn't going to go and do that. Not with sincerity, ever. There's no reason for them to do it. That's not how, if they do with sincerity, they don't have NPD. They may have incredibly highly narcissistic traits. They may be very annoying. They may be very destructive. They may be very exploitative. But if therapy reaches them, a chat, they're not even strapped into a chair like Alex in A Clockwork Orange, of which I would approve, with little droplets to make their eyes not freeze over. Do you know that Stanley Kubrick really did that? He really hired an optometrist. That's not faked. Your man there, what's his name? Malcolm McDowell, his eyes really are pinned open. That's not special effects. Stanley Kubrick was such a lunatic. And they really did have to keep dropping saline droplets into Malcolm McDowell's eyes to not damage them permanently. Lunatics. If you've not seen A Clockwork Orange, just go and watch the latest Kardashians episode and turn this off. I'm joking, of course. Not everybody has to have seen A Clockwork Orange or read the book. You must do it. No, normal therapy without the Clockwork Orange brainwashing stuff. There's just no way that's going to reach somebody with NPD. The person with NPD is going to run rings around the therapist and completely exhaust them. Somebody with highly narcissistic traits, there's no reason why therapy shouldn't. Well, theoretically, you know, if they have a good therapist and they build some rapport and they're prepared to be a little vulnerable, maybe not even all the way vulnerable, they'll get something out of that. and their behavior will change, in a year, 2 years of attendance, and they'll get better for sure. But for full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, there is no help that we have now. When I, with dark humor, I semi-ironically say, sign away their human rights and send them to my mind control gulag, what I'm saying is, it's not as a punishment. I'm not saying I would do that to punish them. But the only option is that the client, in this case, somebody with MPD, must be having the same fully immersive in quotation marks, experience of helplessness, and experience of vulnerability, and experience of total submission that we have as a child. Because what the purpose of such an institute would be to regress the malformed adult infrastructure, superstructure, back into a malleable state, which you can only do by regressing the human being into childhood. That's not my opinion. That's the published research. And then people will say, yes, but it's been shown in the published research you can do that with psychedelics. Yes, sometimes, not always. Like, people are walking around now thinking psychedelics are the future for PTSD. They're really not. The research is in its infancy, and there's far better results, or far more reliable results from ketamine and MDMA than there are from any psychedelics. Okay, different subject. We have to generate neuroplasticity. We have to break down ego boundaries. So it would take a lot. Fully immersive experience, total vulnerability, return to childhood. Would they then need to re-experience abuse in that environment? No, I don't. I mean, I'm not against it in principle. I'm not against it when I say abuse. When we say corporal punishment, okay, you're talking about punishment of the corpus, which is of the body. Anything that you would put somebody through in a military boot camp, I would be open to that in such an institute. I would be open to physical punishments, being forced to clean, being forced to do burpees, being forced to run, maybe mild hazing to some degree, but you've got to be really, really careful, and you have to stay on top of that kind of thing. But I would be open to that. I'd be like, it's a full military experience boot camp. It's going to take years. We probably are going to have to microdose people with psychedelics to get that full regression back to childhood and the soft ego boundaries. But I don't actually think the corporal punishment would be necessary. I don't think it would be a necessary part of the experience. I think it would be traumatic enough to be forced to operate within new coordinates, whereby the sanctions are in place because the people are imposed. It's a prison. The people are imposing the sanctions tell you when you go to bed, when you wake up, the quality of your bed, the quality of your bed clothes, whether you get TV, whether you get to walk outside, whether you get to interact with other people. It's childhood. It's childhood. You have no say. It's enough. You don't need to do corporal punishment on top of that. And I think beyond that, really, not to sound like a ultra hippy dippy, but once they're inside of that tightly controlled environment, I would think the practices could probably be quite gentle, because once you've frozen the adult, the antisocial adult in place, the adult who is doing things to other human beings that are abusive, and you hold them in a certain state, then we need to appeal to the child. Well, screaming and shouting and all the rest of it, it does regress somebody into an infantile state. That's why we call it the infantry, by the way. That's a matter of historical record, infantile and infantry. I'm no aspersions against the infantry. I wanted to join the infantry. I wanted to join the parachute regiment, which had a very, very strong brainwashing component, as do Royal Marine Commandos, as far as psychological conditioning goes. There was some research that indicated that the United States Marine Corps is one of the most, or used to be one of the most invasive of your ego boundaries procedures that you could go through. Debate for another day. Interesting. But beyond that, I think it could be quite kind. It could be quite gentle, because you want to appeal to the child in them and basically say to that child part of them, look, this is a strict environment. This is a strict environment. You are being watched. There are sanctions here. there are things you will not get away with here that you have gotten away with on the outside. Beyond these boundaries and within these boundaries, you are safe. You are safe from the people around you, and we are going to keep people safe from you. This is safety. This is security. The child can emerge slowly. This would take time, and this is all theoretical. And then you would teach direct, not to the adult. There's no point in talking to the adult. You want to be communicating direct to the child within the adult and to the unconscious. There are better ways of getting things done in the adult world than the way that you've chosen. That is my other controversial idea that I want to lay out for you. Number one, narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder they're not on the same planet. They're not in the same solar system. I know that they both have the word like this person has narcissistic traits. This person has narcissistic personality disorder. Send them to the same therapist. You'll get the same results. No, you won't. The only way to deal with it is going to be through very, very immersive and very, very, very invasive and very, very human rights limiting methodologies that I'm not advocating for. I'm just telling it's just a thought experiment. These are just words. It's just a YouTube video, but this is the idea. And then the next thing is help itself. I want to talk to you about help itself. This is on the agenda for the day. Controversial issues of the day that I'm going to deal with. Help. Can we really help people? Now, I've just laid out a systematic procedure that I think would assist people with narcissistic personality disorder to have a chance. I have no idea whether it would work or not. I'd have to work with 1,000 subjects. There would be 3-year cycles, and you'd need to run 3-year cycles probably to have meaningful data. I mean, if you did it less than 10 times, you're going to get criticized for not having meaningful data. Changing the methodologies as you go, and then see what happens at the end. So by the time that was done, I would be an old man. I'm not doing that. I can't be asked. You can give it to somebody else. But when I take over and it's a full-blown dictatorship, I will hire somebody to do that, just as an experiment. For my amusement, Clarice. Can you help people? Can you help people is a question of the day. Not should you help people. Now, you're interested in narcissistic abuse. You're interested in the concept of complex post-traumatic stress disorder and the role that codependency plays in this dynamic. You know, if you were abused by somebody with narcissistic personality disorder and you stayed in a relationship where you knew you were being abused emotionally and psychologically, but you kept on staying, you probably have some strong beliefs around altruism and helping other people. I do. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool codependent. I'm a lifelong fawn responder. I am a people pleaser. I am an overgiver. I am 45 years old. I am in therapy every week to deal with this, and it's probably going to take years of my life just to loosen my grip somewhat on these tendencies. So I'm putting myself first. It's not me saying to you, you have a problem, you're weak. It's not that. I have this. And then I think that people are on a spectrum of what we call codependency. I'll come to ego and codependency in a moment. We need to do some philosophy right now. You and I are not going to discuss psychology for the next 7 minutes. We're going to discuss philosophy. And you have to engage with this portion of the video actively with your mind. You must become a philosopher. I don't care whether you're interested in that or not. I insist. And if you don't like it, then just switch off and go and watch the Kardashians farting into a cup. Do that. I can't get that image out of my head. How would that work? It doesn't matter. The question that I have for you is not, do you think it's important to help people? Because if you're watching videos like this, you probably do think it's important to help people. You probably consider yourself highly empathic. You might even call yourself an empath. You probably highly value compassion, as I do. You probably highly value fairness and equality, as I do. Justice, as I do. So let's just have a little look at a core belief for about 7 minutes. I'm not asking you the philosophical question, should you help people? No, no, no. That's an advanced question. That's for later. Let's deal with the white belt question first, and we can get to blue belt questions when we are at the blue belt level. The white belt question is not should you help people, is can you help people? Can you as an adult help another adult? When I ask you this, you will not think. You will not think. You will respond. Your brain will go, here's my stock response for this question. Pull out the file. This is what I copied from somebody I think is cool. And then I added on this bit that I read from an article on the internet. This is something that I thought to myself one day in the shower that I think is clever. You're going to use the past. We all do this. I do this. It's a natural human response. We have to. It's necessary to go back to reference experiences and pre-existing beliefs to find answers to questions immediately now. Otherwise, the procedure is entirely too slow. Please don't do that. For the purpose of this philosophical exercise, take that file and chuck it in the bin. Don't worry. It's not a real file. It's not a real bin. It's in your imagination. The file remains. Clear your mind. Clear your mind. I'm not asking if you can help an animal. I'm not asking if you can help a child. I'm asking, can, not should, can you help an adult? Can you help an adult? Is it possible for you to help an adult? Where and when can you actually and authentically help another adult? Just think about that. Try to let go of your preconceived opinions on this. Let's say, for example, you want to help a person you know who's in an abusive relationship. I'm not asking whether you should. I'm asking, can you help them? And don't jump from the body and the emotion. What do you mean? Why are you asking me? All this, like body-based, past-based trauma. Why is this weird man asking me to do this exercise? It's making me uncomfortable. Do you remember Blade Runner in the Voight-Kampff? It's called the Voight-Kampff test. It's all made up. Philip K. Dick made it up, and then Ridley Scott in his book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And then Ridley Scott puts it together on the screen, and it's beautiful. It's a masterpiece. But the Blade Runners are chasing replicants. These are androids that have such good replications of human beings with such amazing artificial intelligence that you can't tell them apart. It's really difficult to tell them apart. But if you give them a Voight-Kampff test, it's just called that. It's just made up, Voight-Kampff test. And it checks for their pulse and their pupil dilation. And they have these futuristic machines in Blade Runner that pump air, that pump gas. It's Ridley Scott meets Terry Gilliam kind of a thing. And you can hear this thing pumping in the back. Tsk, tsk. And the Blade Runner, who's the detective that chases replicants, says, do you remember what you walk across the desert and you see a turtle on its back and it can't get up? Do you help it, or do you just leave it baking in the sun? And the replicants visibly start to get a little bit upset. Tell me the first memory you have of your mother. Oh, it was of my mother teaching me to play the piano. Tell me how you feel about your mother. And in the beginning of the film, one of the replicants responds enormously violently and just shoots the investigator because he's so agitated to be asked these questions. Now, ironically, there's two pieces of irony here. The Voight-Kampff test is testing for empathy, because what they're saying is the replicants, when oh God, I'm sorry, it's a long time ago since I watched the movie. Whoever created the replicants, that dude. Can't remember. It was brilliant, and he did such a wonderful job, but he couldn't. The one thing that's quite hard to replicate with the human mind and human emotions is empathy. And when the replicant can't fake empathy very well, that's how you catch them. That's how you catch them. They become very agitated when you ask them to try to access the node, the system, the software for empathy. Now, if you go and watch this, it's good fun. I can't remember the actor's name, but he does an amazing job of sitting there and he's answering the questions, and he's like he's getting more and more cranky and more agitated until eventually he explodes into a homicidal rage. The other irony is that this is a very human response to being asked difficult questions. For people who are somewhere on the spectrum of codependency, somewhere on the spectrum for highly developed fawn responding, somewhere on the spectrum for but basically, you're talking about people who are raised in fundamentally abusive environments, emotionally abusive environments, who had their boundaries broken, who were highly parentified, who were either extremely neglected or extremely enmeshed with their parents, people like myself. And then you start to poke at core beliefs, and they can get really, really angry and really agitated. And so I'll do a seminar, and I'll see people walking like this. Namaste. Namaste. They have like beads and a jewel that means, I don't know, this is Seth's or Horus's left nutsack. And that means peace be upon humankind or something. And maybe they have like something that looks a bit roby on, and they have like special hair, and they talk like this, and they have special dietary requirements. And they'll say things like, I'm an empath and I feel blah, 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 blah. These are the people who explode into a rage the fastest. These are the people who will explode into, they are not narcissists. They don't have MPD, but they explode into a narcissistic rage the fastest. Even somebody without MPD can explode into a narcissistic rage. We all have latent narcissism because the fragility with which they feel their humanity is compensated for with performative gestures. The performance is, I'm very peaceful and I love human beings. The reality is, this is a Freudian defense mechanism. I just can't remember which one it is. If you remember which one it is, you play it in the comments, but put it in the comments. I actually really hate humanity, and I'm really fucking angry with human beings. I'm really, really disappointed and angry with human beings. But because of that, and I don't want to feel that way, I want to mask it. I'm going to pretend like, I am basically, I think I'm Bodhisattva manifested on earth. Namaste. Their worldview is very, very fragile. They're the easiest to provoke. They're the easiest to upset. You know these people. Did you watch the book, the book, The Beach, and then the movie? That's also a good book. I'm citing good movies and good books. There's a Clockwork Orange, good book, good movie. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Blade Runner, good book, good movie. Very short book compared to the movie. And The Beach. Beach is a great book. Beach is a great movie. What's the name of the woman who plays the cult leader? You write it down in the comments now, because I have. Is it Decompensation? No. Decompensation is adjacent to it. It's a reaction formation. But thank you. You triggered my brain into. What's her name? The actress. No, not the film. The film is called The Beach. But the actress, she often plays androgynous characters. You'll remember. Anyway, she does a great job of portraying this character. So I'm poking you in this belief that's important to you. Now, if you start to feel, okay, stay there. That's important. Betty Musket? Is that a real name? Do you guys what? Let's do it again. Last of the Mohicans. Good book. Great film. Michael Mann movie. I must have watched that like 20 times. But in the book, the main character, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, who's super handsome and lean, and they just call him Hawkeye and Long Rifle and Chingach-Chuk. But in the book, he's called, and this is true, his name is Nathaniel, and they call him Natty Bumppo. Natty fucking Bumppo. Oh my god. He sounds like he sounds like a trader from Star Wars. Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton. Thank you. Thank you. I love Tilda Swinton. She plays the cult leader in The Beach so well. So well. Almost like archetypally. She like hit an archetype. She hit the archetype. Calculating, cruel, selfish, but all behind a mask. The perfect example of a communal narcissist, actually. Brilliant. Such a good actress as well. But yeah, Last of the Mohicans, Long Rifle, Hawkeye, Chingachgook, Natty Bumppo is what he's called in the book. It's a good book. Now, I want you to go back to helping people. Can you help people? Can you? But don't think about how you used to think about this. If you start getting triggered into an emotional flashback, still keep the cognition. Like, what's happening? Why do I not like this question? Where do I think he's leading me? Is he going to tell me I mustn't help people? I'm definitely not leading you there. Relax. At the end of this, there is no injunction for you to do anything. It's just a YouTube video. I'm just glowing pixels. I'm not even real. I'm just here with you at this moment in time for whatever reason. And then you switch off and you go and do something else. So you are safe. Your beliefs are safe. But I'm asking, think, can you help another adult? Another way of asking this question philosophically, going to the psychedelics, can you be responsible for a situation you don't control? Why is that? These are dangerous ideas. Where are we going with this? What are we doing, Richie? What's this? What's this game we're playing tonight? Can you help people? Really? You can help a child. You can help an animal. Why? The child and the animal can't live without you. So yeah, you can help them. Actually, the help you offer them, though, really? Just give them shelter and give them food. You know, maybe you do some dog training. Maybe with your child, you give them some kind of a moral compass. But in the big scheme of things, what help do you offer beyond survival? That's the most important help. I don't deny it. But what help do you offer beyond survival? And can you help an adult who is not in your care? Can you help an adult who is not in your care? Ask that question. Are you responsible for a situation or a person you don't control? How could the answer be yes? How could you be responsible for a situation you don't control? There was gale force winds. Gale force winds at Vienna airport today. I flew from Prague to Vienna. Now I'm in Zagreb, Croatia. Have you flown in gale force winds? Have you flown in gale force winds? Whew. Fortunately, it was low. So you can have gale force winds on the ground, but they don't always go particularly high. So once we hit cloud cover, it was fine. But when we came in, I didn't look up the weather app and see that the winds were gusting at 55 miles an hour. So we came under the cloud cover, and the wind god just took the plane and went, "What up, bitch?" And then started shaking the shit out of us. And we were like, what the? We just came out of cloud cover because it was fine. We will be landing in 8 minutes' time. Please put your chairs up. And it was like that. It was stopped. It would like stop. And then it would start and then stop and start. And mercifully, it was quick. But I knew I had to fly back up in it. And I was on the plane descending and I was like, it's probably only a 4-hour drive to Zagreb. And if I walked, it probably wouldn't take me more than a day. And if I swam, and if I took a bicycle, I was like, I do not want to get in a plane and do this again. It was so scary. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I'm supposed to mute it when I blow my nose and stuff. Sorry about that. Who's responsible for that? No one. No one. Who controls the wind? No one. So who's responsible for it? Nobody. Can you be responsible for a person that you don't control? I don't really want to give you answers. I want you to sit with questions that disturb you. And just sit with them and just hold on to them and just go, what am I doing with it now? Can you really help somebody? Now, a lot of us answer these kinds of questions from theory because we're not always exposed to the real world consequences of actually trying to help people. But if you want answers to these kinds of questions from people who do it as a job, there's two groups of people you probably have access to in your extended family or extended friend network. One is social workers, and two is police who work in urban areas. And why don't you take them for a drink? And after drink number one, and they get through the second half of their second drink, then you can ask them about helping people. Let's see what a 20-year social worker tells you about helping people and how you can help a person. Here is a parable I came up with. It is not very good, but I will give it to you anyway. There was once a woman I knew. Outside of my house, she stayed. She was homeless and she had a small baby. And she said, "Sir, I am thirsty and I need water." And I said, "I'm not giving you water. It's just going to perpetuate the cycle of you thinking that begging on the streets is an option. You need to go through the system properly and get yourself a job." And then the next day I saw her again and she said, I am thirsty and my baby is thirsty. My baby has no power here. My baby is thirsty. My baby can't get a job. My baby can't go through the system. We have no choice. We're dying of thirst. And I said, well, there's a water shortage. Like, if I give you my water, that's water's not going to me. It's not going to my family. I'm going to give it to you. Why? And she said, because of the tragedy that befell me in my life. I come from a place that was destroyed by war. I'm innocent. I'm an innocent bystander to the political game playing of career psychopaths who don't care about humanity. And if you don't think I am innocent, you must acknowledge that my baby is innocent. When I have water, my baby will have water. I am the victim of a terrible tragedy. Yes, I know water is scarce right now, but you have some and you could spare me some. So I go home and I look at this moral quandary because I have people in my family who could do with a little bit more water. But their lack of water is not a survival issue. It's just that they would live an even more comfortable life if they had more water, right? This woman who I don't know, it's from a different culture. We don't share genetics. We don't share culture. We don't share a history. We don't share a language. I'm going to do this. Why? Because of the baby. Because of the baby. Okay. So I go and I give her water. Now, in the Hollywood version of this parable, and this is important that we all acknowledge this, like nobody's free from brainwashing. Nobody's free from being trained to think about the world in a certain way. I would give her my water and orchestral incidental music would surge and there would be a slow-mo shot of her drinking the water and then giving the baby water and then turning to me in gratitude and silently mouthing thank you as the baby gurgles and drowns in the water that she poured in. The baby's fine. The baby's fine. Baby's fine. The imaginary baby's fine. The baby drinks and everything is, her child drinks and everything is well. And the sort of the child looks at me with sort of grateful eyes, like, oh, thanks for the water. In that Hollywood movie. Because all this woman wanted was water. She was a human being and all she wanted water. But what if this wasn't a Hollywood movie? What if this was made by some weird European that nobody likes and who hates his or her audience? And the woman takes the water and she goes and exchanges the water for crack. And the baby is crying with thirst. And I watch the woman exchange the water for crack and then put the baby down in a dangerous position, in a dangerous place while she takes crack. What if she takes the water and she says, what water is this? Is this mineral water? Is this Evian? And I'm like, no, it's water from the tap. How disgusting. I'm not drinking this. It's what I drink. It's what my family drinks. Keeps you alive. It's water. Hydrate yourself. I'm not drinking this piss. And then throws the canister at me. It's a parable. It's not real. Nothing happened here. These are just thought experiments. To people who don't hit the streets much, who don't have to, who have a nice life, whose view of reality is coming through the one eye in the corner of the room, this story might seem horrifying or barbaric in its implications. Am I saying don't give starving people water? No, I didn't say that. Am I saying don't help children dying of thirst? No. Am I saying, is it a misogynistic story because I'm a man and she's a woman? Let's change it. It's a gay man. It's not a misogynistic story. It's a homophobic story. It's secretly about how bad gay men are the most selfish. You know who says that? Gay men. If you want to know who the most selfish, narcissistic members of the community of humanity are, it's gay men. That's according to gay men. That's not me. Let's make the story homophobic. He's a gay man and he has a child that he's looking after and he does the same thing. Or let's make the person in this, I'd make them whoever you want. I don't care. The question is, does this ever happen in real life? And if you say no, the priorities of every human being on the planet, including me, is righteousness and virtue. People don't use your kindness and fail to do their moral duty to themselves and to their own children to buy crack. That is Richard Grannon. That is a disgusting, misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, phobophobic. It's exactly the kind of drivel I would expect from a white, middle-class, privileged man like you. You ever work with drug addicts professionally? I have. You ever work with criminals professionally? I have. You ever helped out with the homeless? I have. Have you ever been in a position where you are exposed to working with members of some of the most financially deprived communities on earth, not just in the UK, on earth for years on end? I have. You don't have to believe me. As I said to you, ask the cops you know who work in inner city areas. And then when you've asked them, go and ask your poor, broken, depressed social workers. You want to know how this project started off? You want to know who my client base was in the beginning? I may have never said this publicly before. I usually say it started in Malaysia. So Spartan Life Coach started in Malaysia in 2012. But me coaching people face to face, before I had a clue what I was doing, and I would say, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'll do this if you want to. All I said is I have a qualification in neurolinguistic programming. That's it. And I'd work for 20 quid an hour. It was through a woman I met I was a taxi driver and she was a social worker. She was actually the head of, there's a place in the Northwest where she was the head honcho of of social workers, and she still did social working sometimes as well. And I had her as a client for 3 years, and she gave me a bunch of social workers as clients. They all had the same story. It's back years ago now. I was like 27, 28 when this happened. Ask them. Don't take it from me. Ask your friends who run small businesses and employ people. Are there ever situations where you can try to help a person and offer them water? Water is a metaphor, in case you didn't get it. That's the way parables work. Water is time. Water is love. Water is attention. Water is expertise. Water is money. Water is effort. And a person who told you, right, so get it straight in your head. This is what I want you to do. I don't mind winding people up a little bit. I'm playing for comedic effect, but this is so critically important. I really don't want you to miss this. Policeman, social worker, or small to medium-sized enterprise, preferably if they're working with people who come from deprived communities. Like, so if you know somebody who has a fast food franchise or a packaging and delivering franchise or someone in that area, and so you don't even need to be told, because you've either been social workers or cops or security guards, or you've done this, so you already know. But I'm speaking to the people, and it's not reverse snobbery. I'm not like, oh, blue collar people know something, you people don't. I'm not doing that. And that's a pointless game. It's very boring. It doesn't interest me at all. The fact is, if you led a good life, alhamdulillah, I'm very happy for you. That's nice. If you're never exposed to violence, if you're never exposed to the horrors of the way a large majority of people actually really live, and it is horrifying. It is literally hell on earth, often self-created through ignorance. I'm not saying they consciously sit down and go, how should I fuck my life up? I have money enough to buy food for my 6 children, or I could just spend it all on vodka. I'm not daring to suggest that that's like a rational, conscious choice that comes from a place of balance, emotional regulation, and reason. Someone could not be clinically insane, but still make clinically insane decisions. Okay, it's not that. It's not about blame. I want people to understand non-naively how this effing world really works. It's not so simple. So back to your small to medium-sized enterprise owner. Taxi rank, delivery service, fast food chain, even a clothing shop, but it's in a certain type of area, and ask them this. Are there situations that you've been through where you offered somebody water, time, love, attention, care, money, effort, and they took your water and they told you, they came to you and they said to you, all I need is water. Oh, I had such a tough upbringing. My life was beset by tragedy. I am an angel born in hell. Oh, please give me some water. Oh, just a little. And then you give them water and they... Oh, what was that? Oh my God. That wasn't filtered. That wasn't Evian. And you go, it's what I drink. That's what I drink. That's how I live. That's how my family lives. And they're like, oh, no, no, no. My friends, Sandra, Rupert, and Terence, they don't drink that water. So, and I see people on Instagram, they're not drinking that water. So I don't see why I should. I don't see why I should. I don't want to. You're like, oh, okay. So you just told me you were dying of thirst, but apparently this water isn't good enough. And you might be saying, you're being facetious, or this is a really weird example. I don't care. I'm 45. This summer just gone, they told me I was going to be dead in 12 years. I don't care if you don't get it. I don't care. Look, this bit's balding and it's sweating with exasperation. No, it's not exasperation. It's not it's just too hot in here and I'm sick. I don't care. For people who get me, you're going to get me. People who don't want to get me and are like, this is just a way of shaming people out of charity. It's not. I'm asking a question. Can you help? Can you help? And all I can tell you is the people who rigidly cling to the notion, yes, everyone just wants to be helped to live a happy life. You've not helped anyone. You've not. You might have helped 2 people, and they were probably exactly the same social class, education, and health levels as you. Take it down a notch. Take it down a notch, and get back to me. Tell me how it is. This idea, all people need is just a little help. It's not. It's not. What is needed, and this is a hard truth, is actually an evolution of consciousness through a manifestation of will. What's required of humanity now, today, is not that we all become more helpful, and not that we all just throw kindness, just be more kindingtons all over the kindness. No. If that was going to work, that already would have worked, because believe me, despite what your TV is telling you, there's plenty of kind people in the world doing plenty of kind things. And God bless them. But that's not going to do it. So I'm going to have to open this window because I really am sweating now. I hate winter time in Europe. I mean, why is everything so overheated? Everybody heats everything, closes all the windows, and then goes, oh, we've all got a cold. We've all got the flu. I'm like, could it be because you're drinking each other's spit? I'm going to open this window. We're going to do ego and codependency now. We'll return after these messages of complete silence and darkness. This is from Sandy. When someone's whining, ask them if they want help. 90% will say no. The other percent will say yes. Then ask them why they want help. And then if they say, because someone made me, etc., no, I can't. I don't know what the answers are. I know what the questions are. I learned this intellectual get out of jail free card from Slavoj Žižek. So clever. I am a philosopher. It is only my duty or what to ask good questions as a good Hegelian or what, my God. The will, the subject of the will is very important. And why is it considered arcane, and why is it spoken of disparagingly and with irony and sarcasm? The will, I think, wasn't Nietzsche. I think the subject of the will existed pre-Nietzsche. I think Schopenhauer spent an awful lot of time on it as well. Why don't we talk about that? Why is it treated with disdain? Why is the idea of individual will, which is so clearly key as a distinguishing factor between success, whatever you classify that as, or failure, which is pretty obvious to see, in a person's life, why is that spoken of disparagingly? Why is that a taboo subject? I wonder. You're manic right now, Richard. Just breathe slow. Just breathe and return back to homeostasis. Chance to be a fine thing. To ego, and then to codependency we must go. Through time, through my experience of life and human beings. Last year, you know what I did last year? I'll tell you what I did last year. I tried helping people in business last year. I did like an online business coaching thing, and I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to do it again because it's good fun. It's a good challenge. But here's what happens all the time. And I actually just spoke to a brand manager in London about this issue. And we were like two teenage girls for a while. You know, when teenage girls get excited over like a pop star and they hold each other's hands and they stare into each other's face and scream and jump around in a circle like, ah! We did that. Two men in their 40s. It's normal. We didn't really do that because of the depth of agreement that we'd come to on this one subject. When people generally, when human beings generally are looking for help in business, and this applies to any enterprise, it could be your health, it could be your relationships, it could be anything. Business runs on incredibly simple principles. Business, like small to medium-sized enterprises, not corporations, because I never am and I don't understand them. But small to medium-sized enterprise is a formula. It's an equation, and it's really easy. And it's simple. It's simple. The application of it is not easy. What is it? So people say, what's the secret to like good marketing, or making loads of money, or scaling my business, or whatever it is? And they come with these complicated questions, and in their mind, they've created again, we're back to Alfred Adler, this fake barrier to success. Like, if only I knew the magical formula, then I could reach the promised land of more sales or more leads or whatever it is, or a better marketing plan, a better customer acquisition machine. And then you tell them what they actually have to do what it is they're trying to do. And they kind of look at you and they're like, And they're really not happy. They're really, really not happy. And the reason why is because so much of what actually stops business from working and stops businesses from progressing is not a bad market. It's not being able to find good staff. It's not that the market is flooded with what you have, which is a really weird excuse that people give me, because I'm like, well, that just shows that everybody wants the thing that you have. Of course, you can make, if you want to become a billionaire in a flooded marketplace, okay, that's going to be a problem. But for most people, they'd be happy if they pulled in an extra $50,000 to $100,000 a year. Come on, let's not yank each other's chain here. For most of us, that's lifestyle changing money. Like, if you want to talk in the big leagues with the big boys, okay, that's a different conversation. But most people, if they pulled in an extra $50,000 to $100,000 a year, they'd be doing backflips around the living room if their backs will let them to do such a thing. What is it that stops that from happening? It's ego. It's ego. It's pure ego. It's not just, okay, let's do it like this. Here's the pen. I say, Richard says to you, you're my therapist, you're my business coach. I want to put the pen in my other hand. I want to put the pen in my other hand. And you say, Richard, are you sure you want to put this pen in this hand? Yes. Okay. Now you're a good coach, and you go, okay, dude, just visualize that the pen is already in your hand. How do you feel? Do you feel good? What do you lose? What are you afraid of? Blah, blah. And I'm like, no, this, honestly, coach, I want this. And this is all I want. You're a good coach. You're a good therapist. You say, are you sure? You're not masking something here. There isn't some chronic fear you have. Like, this is really what I swear, voila, I want this pen in this hand. Okay. So you teach me how to take this pen, how to move it, how to make these movements towards this hand, how to know when it's hit my hand so that I can close the fist around it and grab the pen. You've taught me everything I need to know on how to grab the pen. Get hold of this thing, or we start moving this thing. And I'm like, I don't like this. No, I don't. No. You're my coach. You're my therapist. You're like, dude, what? Well, you're asking me. I told you I wanted this pen in this hand, yeah? That's what I'm paying you for, yeah? And you joker, you're telling me to move the pen towards my hand. I don't know why I bothered. And you'd be sat there, if you're a coach or a therapist or you've done this kind of work, you sat there going, what is happening right now? What is happening right now? You said you wanted this pen in this hand. Yeah, but I didn't want to move my, isn't it obvious? I didn't want to move my hand. Okay, you don't want to move this hand. No. All right, I'll give you a second strategy. Thank you, coach. You go, okay. Take your right hand and move it towards the pen. And then when you feel the pen in your hand, you hold it. That's my other strategy. That's your other strategy. Will that work? It's going to work. Are you sure it's going to work? I don't want to waste my time. It's going to work, okay? But you have to move your hand towards the pen. Okay. Now, before we start, you are going to have to move your hand towards the pen. Okay? Yep. Do you want your hand on the pen? 100%. You're happy to do this? Yep. You know what happens next. You start to do this. You say, move your hand towards the pen. Like, no. I don't like this. Why? Because people want what they want. And that's true. That's true. The person does want the pen in their hand, but they want it to happen in a way that they're rigidly visualizing. And you know who taught me about this? My sister. My sister taught me about this with her two kids. This is actually a couple of years ago. They were younger, so they're still very young. Maybe they were at this time, they're like 3 and 5. And they're such funny little creatures, like these weird little drunk humans. They're like little drunk pirates. Like stagger around going, I want this, I want that. They point at things and go, rah. You just look at them going, this is wild. I don't know what to do with all this energy. And they sometimes get really, really upset. And to me, as an outsider, I'm not a parent, I never had kids. I'm like, they're really upset. Why are they so upset? And she said to me, with a toddler, they create a vision of what is going to happen. So say you say, we're going to go to the park and we're going to play on the slides. And not all kids are like this. Some kids are more flexible. Some kids are less flexible. Some kids are like, they'll just go with the flow. Some kids are not. They create a vision of what's going to happen. And they have a story of how that's going to play out. And if the story is deviated from in a way that they do not like, they will lose their minds. This is totally normal, totally, it's a developmental phase. Everybody goes through it. It's completely natural. It's completely normal. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think some of us as adults, we haven't let go of that phase. You can have the things that you want. Largely speaking, I would be bold enough to say that. Most of the things that you want, you probably can have them. Like our dreams are so limited anyway. Probably most of the things you want, you can have them. But you can't have them in the way you want to have them. Let's take an example like you want to get really fit, you want to get into really great shape. You want that. Sure. Can you have that? Well, it's barring major physical disability, it's not that hard. I mean, it's all equations. It's all simple. It's like calories in, calories out. This is how much movement we did. This is what we're trying to move your body towards. There's a limit to what you can do because we still govern by the laws of physics and thermodynamics, the same as everything else in this material world, but you can do it. So you can have a really great body. Sure. But not in the way that you want. Can I still sit on the couch for hours on end eating pizza? Probably not. So you can have what you want. Theoretically, yes, you can have what you want, but you can't have it in the way that you want. I've steered clear of talking about ego on this channel, generally speaking, for years. And the reason I avoid talking about ego is because it kind of feels like it's in the realm of spiritual teaching. I think it's one of these issues where maybe less so now, but like certainly when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, ego was the 80s narcissism. So if you wanted to just say a thing was bad or a person was bad, you just threw the behavior or the person in a box called ego, in the way that nowadays people just throw a person or behavior in a box called narcissism. And I was like, wow, that's way overused. But actually now, as I'm looking back, I'm like, that for some things, that's actually the precise term. That's precisely what we should be talking about, is ego. Where is the... You're here watching a YouTube video. I'm not the only person you watch. I know you're cheating on me, and I accept it. I don't mind. In fact, I've grown to like it. So you're watching videos like mine. And there's going to be, the algorithms will know there's a cluster of like-minded videos that you will watch. They're sort of information-based. People try to be entertaining, but you're probably here because you're seeking solutions, right? So you're seeking solutions for stuff, which means if you're seeking solutions for stuff, I'm going to be bold enough to presume that there are problems in your life, as there are. So all human beings have problems in their life, but you're seeking solutions. Bravo. So you're doing something about it, even if it's just watching YouTube videos. The problems in your life that you've had the most angst over and that have lasted the longest, despite the solutions you've tried to come up with them, look at them through a lens of ego, stiffness, and stubbornness. By stiffness, I mean stubbornness. Do this ego-lessly, right? You don't want to be judgmental. That's not going to help. Oh, I'm such an egomaniac. I'm so stubborn. That's really not going to help. Have a sense of humor. We all do this. Like, it's a totally human thing to do. But if you're stuck on something and you've been stuck on it for years, where's the ego element to this? What is it trying? Where are you like, where's that sort of like pride? And there's toddler ego, and then there's like adolescent ego. Remember when we were teenagers and you were just so certain, you're just so wonderfully arrogant, so wonderfully certain on certain subjects where you just had it figured out. You might not have been a self-secure person, but you were certain about certain subjects that you're not certain about now as an adult. Because with experience comes humility, you would hope. So think, where's the ego? Where's the stiffness? Where am I being like that toddler that my sister enlightened me on? Where you want something, but you have a vision of how you're going to receive it. You want something, but you, perhaps you're even grandiose. Look for that with a sense of humor. Just, well, maybe a bit grandiose here. Let's cite another. We've done this. This has been a good episode for this. So good books that become good movies. No Country for Old Men. One of my favorite books of all time, by Cormac McCarthy, who wrote probably my favorite fiction of all time, which is Blood Meridian. No Country for Old Men is a fantastic book and a really amazing adaptation onto film. I mean, I think it was really, really true to the spirit of the book. It's great. There's this character who kind of represents the unknown, the kind of technological progress and cold-blooded violence that would frighten an older man, that would intimidate an older guy who's stuck in his ways, who's frightened of progress, who's frightened that the world is changing and will change after his death, which we are all afraid of. There's a neophobia, a fear of the new. And so you have an old sheriff played by Tommy Lee Jones, and his rant, his gripe in the movie that I don't remember if they're in Texas or New Mexico. I think they're in Texas, or maybe it moves from different locations. So it's all some of the movie is set in Mexico for sure. They crossed the border. Tijuana? No. It's Texas. It's Texas, and New Mexico. And his gripe is this country is changing. The movie's set in 1980. The book and the movie are set in 1980. It's like the country's changing. The violence that is coming from the cartels and the narco gangs coming up from the south is a new kind of violence. The drugs are new. The music is new. The culture is new, and it's ultra violent. It's ultra cold. And you have this one character, Anton Chigurh, who represents that, who's played in the movie just brilliantly by Javier Bardem. Don't do it Portuguese. Do it Spanish. Bardem. Javier Bardem. And he's arrogant. He's arrogant. He's grandiose. There's something that he's pursuing, a MacGuffin, if you like, a suitcase full of money that he's pursuing. And he has an opportunity. There's a piece of dialogue in the film where he has the opportunity to just stop playing with his food and going after people and killing them, and to do his job, which is to pick up the money. But instead of just picking up the money, he wants to play God and enforce this weird psychopathic, Gnostic, murderous ideology that he's constructed to lay against people, where they fall within the clockwork of his logic and they can live and die on the spin of a coin. And another character called Carson Wells says to him, don't do this. You don't have to do this. Like, you don't have to act like this. Go get the money. I know where it is. And Anton Chigurh says, I don't need to get the money. Carson Wells says, I know where the money is. And Anton Chigurh says, I don't care where the money is. I know where it will be. So there's this solar system like quality to his thinking. He imagines himself as an archon. The archons the archons in some Gnostic systems were represented by the planets. So he's an archontic influence, and he's a planet. So he doesn't care where the money is. He doesn't want it to be brought to him like some sort of a mortal. He is an archon, like monarchy is a lord. An archon is an overlord, and sometimes the 7 deadly sins come from 7 planets, and he represents one of the planets, and he sees himself like that. So if you want to fly from Earth to Mars, you don't go, here's Earth, fly to Mars. You have to go, here's Earth, here's Mars, and then you spunk out your rocket to where you think Mars is going to be at the time when the rocket would be at that place in space, and presumably you try and calculate the shortest distance. He says, don't give me the money. I don't want you to give me the money. I don't want to go and get the money. He says, I don't care where the money is. I know where it will be. And I don't need you to give it to me, because it will be placed at my feet. He speaks as royalty. He speaks as a monarch, as an archon. He says, it will be placed at my feet as a king of the earth, as like this evil archontic influence on the earth. There is tremendous grandiosity in this. There is satanic, saturnic influence in this attitude. It will be placed at my feet. Sometimes some things in life are given to us. Most things are not. Most things are not going to be given to us. We're just not in that position. Most things are not going to be placed at our feet. It is incredibly egocentric. It is incredibly arrogant and toddler-like. Anton Chigurh in the film, when I watched the film the first few times, I was like, oh my God, he's like the Terminator. He's kind of a cool character. The last time I watched the film, I was like, this is one of the most irritating characters that's ever been put on TV, that's ever been put in a film. He really annoyed me. The entire movie, I was like, wow, you're very annoying and very arrogant. So this came out, I think it's 2007. That's me returning to a movie, as we all do, as you've done, with fresh eyes, with older eyes, not fresh, unfresh eyes, and seeing things in a different way. Toddlers have a vision of how things will be and what will be given to them. It is a childish worldview. What he has is a God complex. And we see that in the movie and in the book, because his ideology, his clockwork, shows him that he's not a God, Deus ex machina, outside of the clockwork of the machine. He's in it, and he finds it to his cost, without giving you too much of a spoiler, because if you haven't read the book or seen the movie, you should. He's shown with violent certainty that he is not above and beyond. And it's the rule by which he has lived has brought him to the place where he is, which if you know the movie, you'll know what that relates to. Don't be stiff. Don't be grandiose. Don't assume things will be laid at your feet. Don't assume things will be laid on for you. It is childish. It doesn't mean that you were spoiled as a child if you still think this way. It can mean the opposite, weirdly enough. Sometimes it means you were spoiled as a child, but for some of us, it can mean you were neglected as a child. And actually, what's happened is your growth out of childhood, out of infancy, has been retarded. It's been retardé, held back. Instead of progressing, instead of that rocket firing into space and eventually meeting Mars, it just slowed down and just stopped at a certain point, and now is just orbiting the Earth impotently with no fuel. Why? Probably due to either indirect or direct trauma, indirect or direct abuse. You're either neglected or you're actually abused, and it retards that growth. So we stay in a toddler-like state. One moment, my nose. I feel like I'm in English Lit 101. Chaucer was so complicated. And though I be of no authority to speak of the woe that there is in marriage. We're going to do Chaucer today. I won't torture you anymore with any more literary references. Try to be flexible and try to forget that. Forget my advice. Forget advice. Forget cheap wisdoms. It's useless. Advice is useless. That's me trying to help you. I can't help you. Nobody can help anyone. See if you can become aware, conscious, awake to these moments where you go, oh, there it is. There it is. I'm being stiff. I'm being stubborn. I'm being toddler-like. I'm being like a child. I think it will be laid at my feet. Nothing is coming to you. Nobody is coming to save you. We must have that running inside of our heads. And it's not to overcome entitlement as such. It's to overcome the trauma that stopped growth. And of course, a toddler, you're stuck in a toddler cycle. Of course, toddlers are entitled. They expect people to give them things because, well, they can't do anything themselves, and they're only alive because people have given them things. All they've known, all any human from the age of 0 to 4 has known, is being given stuff. And how are you given it? Well, you whinge until you get it. That's your first communication as a human being, is creating a fuss and terrorizing people auditorily through the ears until they give you stuff and make you stop. So you like, if you have a sense of humor about this, which I hope you do, one could say we are born bullies. Our first communications are manipulative and bullying. That is a joke. It's not a joke. It's meant humorously, but hopefully meaningfully as well. Be aware of that. So if you see it in yourself, don't be like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. Maybe I have narcissistic personality disorder. No, you're just a person. You're just a person. That's just what comes. Be aware to the ego. Finally, to the codependency. I've gone on for a very long time. I have a lot of energy for somebody who's sick. Codependency and ego, hand in hand they go. I've noticed an uptick in people getting upset over, it happened in the seminar, it happened in a few of my personal conversations with people, it's happened online a couple of times now, where I say people stay in narcissistic relationships because of something called codependency. And the response I'm getting, if I can be honest with my feedback, with my reflection of what I think I'm seeing, and I could be wrong, is people really don't like that word. Because if you say to somebody, oh, you have CPTSD, they seem to be like, oh, that's okay. Yeah, I probably do. Or if you say you're struggling with codependency, maybe because there's a word in there which is dependent, and the cultural milieu, the zeitgeist is, no, we're all strong and independent, and you don't want to think of yourself as dependent, even though you couldn't live without your gingerbread latte every day and your iPhone scrolling for 3 hours, of Instagram and TikTok every day. Of course, we're dependent. Of course, we're all interdependent. None of us would survive very long when the grid eventually goes down, which is probably going to happen this year. We'll all be dead fairly quickly, mercifully. Joking, it's a joke. Codependency, just to clear it up, codependency is not a clinical term. And so all of psychology is up for grabs to a degree. Like, if you can write a more convincing paper than the last paper that was written, you can win consensus. And you might think that's absurd and non-scientific. Well, don't get mad at me. That's do some research, write some papers, and the way people think about personality disorders can change from one decade to the next, from one 5-year period to the next, and from 1 year to the next. If you provide a convincing enough case, you win. Win, change, whatever you want to say. Codependency is not that. So psychology is up for grabs. The clinical terminology is up for grabs, but less, because if it's in the DSM without you being an American board registered psychiatrist, you could try. You absolutely could try. But non-clinical terms are totally up for grabs. Codependency is a non-clinical term. It's a non-clinical term. What it means to different people in different scenarios differs. That's just the way that it's not a clinical entity. It's adjacent to, but not the same as, a clinical entity, which is called dependent personality disorder. And there's a lot of crossover of the way in which most people use the term codependent, and most people use the term codependent, and the way in which dependent personality disorder is specifically described through its diagnostic criteria, but it is not the same. So you have to be careful. So when I'm saying codependent, broadly speaking, I wrote a book on this, if you're interested. It's called A Cult of One. Broadly speaking, I'm talking about a people pleaser with a highly pronounced fawning trauma response in the CPTSD structure, within the CPTSD cosmology. It's a fawn response. So you struggle to say no, you struggle to set boundaries, and you usually end up overgiving that leads to feeling quite resentful. Most clinicians, coaches, counselors, and so on, when they use codependency as a term, that's what they mean. Your existence is heavily reliant. Your sense of self is, not your existence. Your sense of self, your sense of well-being, the way you regulate your self-image, comes through subservience to another person. And I felt like, just in the last 6 months, way more pushback to that. And I'm like, well, do you not like, is it because do you not like the word? Do you not like the concept? What is it that you don't like? And then often when I'm getting into conversations with people about this, and you start to get into the specifics, and you start to apply the Socratic method and be like, okay, what do you mean? Because this is what I mean. It transpires that the person doesn't even really know what a narcissist is, because the way that the term is being thrown around now, it's almost like it's starting to feel to me like a parlor game. You know, I've literally had people walk up to me in public, which is happening way more now. By the way, if you see me in public, I don't look friendly. Like, my face is like, make a very Slavic face, not smiling, not looking, not happy at all. But inside is la la la, very happy times. You can say hello to me. You can come over to me and say hi. It's fine. You don't have to like take pictures of me from across the street and then send it to me in my email. That's way weirder than just walking up to me and saying, hey, I've watched your YouTube videos. And I'll probably say, oh, that's really cool. What is your name and where are you from? Sometimes when people are walking up to me, and this has happened a few times over the years, they'll say something odd to me like, thank you so much. You made me realize I wasn't the narcissist. And I'm like, okay, narcissistic personality disorder and its place in abusive relationships is not a game of who's to blame. It really doesn't help you if you're like, if you want to leave a relationship because you're not happy, leave the relationship because you're not happy. If your partner is not meeting your needs, despite you saying, let's go to therapy, despite you telling them what is wrong, whatever, you don't need complicated and controversial, by the way. This is a really controversial diagnosis. You don't need that. You are allowed to exit a relationship without a psychiatric diagnosis, like fully and completely. Like, am I the narcissist? Is she the narcissist? Is he the narcissist? Your videos helped me to find out that he was the narcissist. And I'm like, I don't feel good when you say that. I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job in the world when people walk up to me and say stuff like that, because I don't want to feed into that mindset. That's narcissism. And narcissistic personality disorder is not a blame game. It's not your get out of jail free card for being a dick in a relationship and going, because I've even had people say, oh, well, my ex-husband was a narcissist, and yes, I did cheat on them, but that's only because of the narcissistic abuse. I'm like, okay, whoa. What are you saying to me right now? What is this? Are you trying to use you're not a psychiatrist, and even if you were, you couldn't diagnose your partner. You've done an at-home diagnosis for what? Again, we're back to Alfred Adler. What's the purpose of the exercise? Is it to justify your bad behavior? I'm not the guy to be coming to with stuff like that. Like, yes, I cheated on my husband, but because I cheated on my girlfriend multiple times, but only because of her constant narcissistic gaslighting. I'm just like, dude, you could leave. You could leave. This whole thing, and I'll say this here as we're nearing the end, I will take your questions, is becoming a parody of itself. And it's not going away, it's getting bigger. It's getting bigger. If you look at like the Google search results, it's growing. And I'm really worried that it's going to turn into this just weird mass psychosis witch hunt. I've even done interviews with the people and people watching it going, Richard Grannon is clearly a narcissist. And I'm like, what about me is clearly narcissistic? And I know for a fact that if you took any one of those person who's saying that and said, okay, tell me what the 9 traits of narcissism are, that they couldn't give you 5 of them because they haven't looked. They don't know what it means. In their head, it clearly means person I don't like, person I wish to denounce, person I don't like who I wish to denounce. And I'm like, this is not good. We really don't need this. So similarly, as we're trying to get closer to proper nuanced definitions that are meaningful in a proper context, we have to do that with codependency as well. When I'm saying somebody is codependent, I'm not branding you as something. I'm not saying you're broken or worthless or bad or evil or stupid. Again, there's this rather, I feel it somatically. I get this weird, creepy feeling. It's a warning. My body's like, warning. Something bad is happening here. I think I know what it is. I just had it while I was talking then. I think it's because I know it's splitting. We're splitting. You're trying to reduce things to good and bad, and that is no way to live. That is the source of narcissistic personality disorder, which is a subject for a different day. But splitting, the act of splitting, all good, all bad, and polarizing everything, that's how narcissists, people with narcissistic personality disorder are created. They're created in an environment where the parent or the environment itself ends up splitting the child. So don't split. Somebody could be codependent and be a really nice person. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool codependent person and pretty nice, pretty agreeable. I'll chat to anybody. If I can do something for somebody, I will. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. And then you have codependents who are awful. And then you'll see in some online spaces, they'll say you can't say that codependents ever do anything bad. And it's followed up with a bunch of comments that get like 100 likes saying things like codependents are some of the nicest, sweetest, kindest people out there. And I'm like, what? First of all, First of all, you didn't choose codependency. You can't virtue signal off something that you didn't choose. And second of all, there's no evidence for that whatsoever. I would argue, and can create a pretty strong argument for it, that narcissistic personality disorder, not psychopathy, but narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, these are all of the cluster B personality disorders, are all examples of codependency. This is all an example of how somebody has been so thoroughly broken through their traumatic childhood that their sense of self is entirely dependent, meaning with, another human being. Okay, in the case of narcissistic personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder, the person is entirely interchangeable. And largely speaking, it's not a person they want an audience. And even if they're only with one person, they're still going to fantasize they have an audience. Okay, but it's still a form of codependency. Don't get freaked out by the term codependency. It doesn't mean anything else other than you've learned a fawn response. And it's not terminal. It's not like narcissistic personality disorder. Therapy absolutely can reach this. It absolutely can help. There's no reason to think like if you've shown, somebody said to me the other day, well, I wasn't codependent from childhood. And I'm like, okay. But if you stayed in a psychologically abusive relationship that you knew was psychologically abusive and you didn't leave, you've got to, dude, something's up. Like there's a reason for that. Maybe it's not in your childhood, but it's from somewhere. One person said to me, well, I was afraid. I was afraid of violence. I'm like, that's not narcissistic abuse. That's psychopathic abuse. That's not a psychologist's issue. That's a police issue. That's a different thing altogether. I'm just going to turn the screen off for a moment, deal with my nose, and then I'll take your questions. Please make your questions one sentence long and have them end in a question mark because I like that very much. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. I'm very well, thank you for asking, sir. A little ill, but okay. One sentence long, sit up straight. Yes, mommy. Did I do it good, mommy? Oh God. What is the difference between narcissism and having narcissistic traits? Stock, you need to go back. This video will be up. It's live. I am live. It will be re-uploaded in about 20 minutes. And then you go back to the beginning of the video where I get into that. If I go through that now, the people who've been here from the beginning will suffer greatly, which of course I would enjoy. But even my sadism has its limits. As a codependent, it feels like I just learned to not exist. Yes, that's what I would call dyed in the wool codependency. That's what I experienced. To not have people attacking me for being alive. Yes. Now here I am in Zagreb, Croatia, and I know the word for this. There is a word. It is strashilo. Yes, I'm strashilo. You become a scarecrow. So your real self, this is how I described it. This is my idea. I call this echo codependency. It's almost like a mirror image of narcissism, as in Narcissus, and echo, as in Ovid's tale. So Narcissus is stuck on yang, on projection, always on, and echo is stuck on yin, always receiving. So they learn to over be, and we learn to under be, and the self, we shrink it away. That's why I made a course called Summoning the Self, which is to help people who are strashilo, scarecrows, try to come back to life, because otherwise you're just haunting your own life. Heather asks, is there, in your opinion, depths of mothership, or is it overall level playing field? I don't know what this question means. Is there depths of mothership? I don't understand. I'm sorry. I don't understand. No te entiendo. No te entiendo, señora. ¿Me puedes pedir otra vez si tú quieres? You can ask me again if you like, but I didn't understand that. Is there depths of mothership? Please ask again. It sounds interesting. Julia says, the problem is when you're a woman with a child, no family around you, it's very difficult to leave. That is true. COVID, I don't know. Possibly. So sometimes I feel like I've gotten better and then it drops again, which was like my last experience of COVID was like that. And I've been to the gym a few times. I'll go to the gym and I'll be strong, fine. And then I will sleep for an hour and a half afterwards. So certain amounts of effort make me fall asleep. That was like COVID last time. And the other thing in the gym, obviously I'm not an endurance runner, but I don't usually run out of breath. But even between sets, yesterday I was in the gym and I felt like I couldn't get enough oxygen into my lungs to recover for the next set of weights, not of cardio. So I'd move some weights, stop. Usually after like 60 seconds, I'm ready to go again. And I was like, consciously taking breaths and feeling like my lungs were not oxygenating my blood properly. So who knows? Hey, raising a hand over here. You got a lot of questions, kid. Yep. If you got a question, make it one sentence long, have it end in a question mark. Why is psychopathic abuse not a psychologist issue? Police don't do anything to protect people from domestic abuse if you're male. Because if you're being threatened with violence, a psychologist is going to tell you to contact the police. So that's actual criminal behavior. So that's why I would say it's psychopathic. Whereas narcissistic abuse tends to be more coercive control and emotional manipulation. Is Richard a Muslim? Did you convert? Sister, you cannot. You can't convert to Islam. It is the truth and the only way. You can only revert and stop lying and stop being a kuffar, which in Arabic etymology, a kuffar is one who hides the truth in the dirt away from the light of the sun. Are the narcissists ever leaving my mental space? Eu não sei. Boa noite, Paulo in Portugal. Are the narcs ever leaving my mental space? I hope so, sir. I hope so. When you will be business coaching again? Second year into my tattoo studio. There's a few things I have to move around in the first quarter of this year. So perhaps I'm hoping to relocate to Spain. There I will set up an office and a studio at some cost. And once that's done, I'll be able to do it. I really like it. I would do it because I like it. It's good fun. Could you simplify codependency with just validation seeking? Unfortunately not. Codependency could be quite a deep issue. I stated a couple of years ago, I don't know whether I stand on this. I stated a few times a couple of years ago that codependency is probably a harder issue to resolve than CPTSD. And my thinking at that time was because, and I'm just telling you because this is how deep I think it goes, that you can be codependent with reality itself. You can be in a codependent relationship with reality itself. So it's quite a deep problem as to know codependency to me. Remember, it's a non-clinical term. It's up for grabs. Is not just validation seeking, but that's a very important part of the codependent relationship. Potent's here. Over we say hello to Potent. Why were the moments I felt the narcissist showed good empathy skills? Because narcissists, if they're good at being narcissists, are capable of cognitive empathy at quite a high level. They're not so capable of effective empathy. I want to ask, does working as an escort break the psyche of girls? I need to know what you mean by break the psyche. Break the psyche. And I also don't think we can make blanket statements that any single, like all you've done is describe a way of making money. Now, within that, say if I said every girl who works as a drugs trafficker has her psyche broken, or every girl who whatever, or every boy who whatever has this psychological impact. I don't think you can say this behavior, this way of making money always has this outcome. And breaking the psyche, what would that mean? When you get easy money for your beauty, see, I can't consent to that assumption that all the manifestations of escorting that exist in the world would come under the definition easy money for beauty. I can't go with that. And then when you get easy money for your beauty and then it ends, does it destroy a person? Don't know. I don't think anybody who had any sort of intellectual integrity would say they can really answer that question. I could pontificate, but this kind of like red pill style pontification about women's beauty and the way it's leveraged and everything else, I'm just like, man, all this stuff, it's so boring now. It's so dull. Like, humanity has really big problems, really big challenges that face us. And I hate identity politics. I really loathe it. I think it destroys the fabric of reality. But I'm not stupid. I'm aware that I sit here as a man with my man's face and my man's voice, and I'm white and I'm a certain age and whatever. And identity politics creeps into everything. That's just the way it is. And I don't think it's useful. I've never been a woman who's worked as an escort. That doesn't mean I'm not one of these people who believes, unless you've been exactly that thing, you can't talk about it. No, that's absurd. But at the same time, like, what do I have to? A woman who works as an escort? What does that even mean? Like, how many? There's probably as many different permutations and experiences of that as a woman who's made that choice. And where escort, when escort, how escort. Was escorting in ancient Mesopotamia different to escorting in, we're just going to be led into making broad generalizations that I really don't think help. I don't mind pissing people off, as I've demonstrated in this video, but you got to pick your battles. And I really don't feel strongly about that. When you get easy money for your beauty and then it ends, does it destroy a person? I just can't be down with this characterization that I'm not down. Meh. I should have just said what I really felt in the beginning, which is meh. You don't know what you said to Narcissus. You better watch yourself. It's like a stranger had a key and came inside my mind and moved all my things around. Wow. Ew, Marilyn Manson. Ooh. Speaking of Narcissus, did you discover new techniques or roles of conduct to heal codependency, which could be in Cult of One Part 2? No. Yeah, kinda, but I wouldn't do a Cult of One Part 2. Cult of One is kind of, it's an okay book. It's not the book I wrote. It was defanged, so I wouldn't do a Cult of One Part 2. I don't think, but it is what it is, right? I have important things to say to people who are dealing with codependency, because I'm dealing with my own issues of codependency and it's really helping. But one of the things that's massively helped is going to therapy and then learning to put your own interests first and to stop being addicted to serving others in a tyrannical master-slave style relationship. Richard, if you can, Obravach, and see the river valley. It's pure spring water. Oh, okay. Obravach. If I have time, if my physical strength returns, I will see more of Zagreb. If not, I'll just come back. I'm a ghost living in my house. Yes, we haunt our own lives. I shall catch up with Otawas. Were you a victim of narcissism in the past yourself, Richard? Yes. Yes. In family relationships, in friend relationships, in business relationships, and in romantic relationships. Sadly, I'm a career codependent. I'm very comfortable in I'm too comfortable in narcissistic abusive relationships. I'm so comfortable in them that if a nice lady comes along and is kind enough to show interest in me, if she's not abusive, it's very hard for me to form a connection with her. It's terribly sad. Paolo is back with squids this time. Mashallah. Will Softmore says it was both, to be honest, but thanks for answering. And it was a couple of years ago. It was both. Oh, you're asking about the narcissism psychopathy thing. Interesting and painful. Narcissistic psychopathy is a very harsh kind of abuse and takes a long time to heal from. Am I right in thinking as a codependent, when we neglect our own needs, the super id, you've created a new clinical entity, the super id, which is the negative inner critic, is the super id. I'm not aware of a super id. I'm aware of a super ego, an ego and an id, but who knows, man? Freudian psychoanalytic theory may have taken a jump forward. What would a super id be? Yeah. So you have your impulses and your childish drives, and then you have superpower them. Do you mean the super ego takes over? Let me know. Woke ideology is a kind of narcissistic cult, isn't it? A lot of things are cults, and I have a course coming out soon, which I can't talk about too much, but it was a in-depth look at the psychology of cults, and I learned a tremendous amount. And all I can say is that what I experienced when I did this work, which will be out, I think, before the end of this month. I'm really looking forward to it coming out because it was good. The guy that I worked with, he showed me that really cults are kind of narcissism writ large. And I was a bit disturbed by what I found, because I'm not going to say one type of abuse is worse than another, because it's just not a useful statement. But I've never been in a cult, a proper cult, like a group cult. I wrote the book and called it A Cult of One, because it was like, oh, this is what I imagine a cult would be, but there's only me and her in this cult. She's the cult leader, I'm the cult follower. To woke ideology, yes, it's narcissistic, and yes, it's cult-like, but most ideologies are cult-like, and if it's a cult, it's narcissistic. I would go so far as to say narcissism is a key element of all cults, and many things that we don't normally think of as a cult are in fact cults. All forms of extremist ideology are narcissistic. So woke, or what is called woke, which really isn't woke, it's an appropriation of a term from African American culture, which really has little bearing on the original meaning. But I know what you mean. We all know what you mean by that. Yeah, it's an ideological infection, but all ideological infections are cult-like and narcissistic. So when there you see, is it on the left? It could be on the left. It could be on the right. It could be very authoritarian. So there's the political compass. You've got the left and the right, and then you've got more authoritarian leftism, more authoritarian rightism. and then you have more libertarian leftism, more libertarian rightism, any sort of extremist ideology where people have a large degree of certainty about how everyone should live in order for everything to be okay, is weird and gross. It's weird and gross. Woke people telling me that I have to shut up because I'm white and male and heterosexual, which I believe are immutable characteristics. I believe I was born this way, is incredibly ugly and disturbing. Right-wingers telling me that I'm a moral degenerate because I'm 45, I didn't get married, didn't have kids, and don't go to church every week is equally ugly. I would say, broadly speaking, I'm very suspicious of people who are very certain about how everyone else should live. I'm very suspicious of that. I'm very suspicious of people who are very certain that they have all the solutions to everything. I'm very suspicious of people who engage in utopianism, which all political extremist ideology relies on, is utopianism. Everything is going to be okay if we all tick these boxes and we get over that hill. On the other side of that hill, everything is okay. No, it isn't. It's still this shit. We'll still be in this simulation. Nobody's getting out of this. It's because we've got a weird salvation God complex. And it's our unwillingness to accept what we have and what we are and where we are that makes things so awful. This could be quite pleasant. It would still be shitty because it's the material world and you're just stuck in a flesh suit that's slowly rotting. But we could have a lot nicer time if we could consciously evolve. That's the only solution I can see, and that can't be done collectively. It has to be done by individuals through the force of their own will. They have to choose to consciously evolve. People who rely on collective action, there are another group of people I'm very suspicious of. You just join us and just do this and say this and believe this, and everything is going to be great. Like when? Like where? What are you pointing to in human history? When has that ever worked? When has that not led to bloodshed and disappointment? So, yeah. I also am not a utopian, and I think it's inevitable, and I worry about it a lot less these days. We are going to do gulags and genocide again. You can see that coming like slowly. We're all like forming back into a very sort of pre-World War I, pre-World War II sort of formation. I think it's inevitable. I think there are unconscious forces that you can't even talk to, you can't reason with. And yes, so I would just finish that ramble by saying narcissism and cults are the baseline state of humanity, as is violence. What a happy thought. However, we as individuals can reconnect with the Almighty, take refuge, and know peace for ourselves. Stirring music plays in the background. Rain falls in slow motion. Hair flaps in the wind. Sweaty forehead dries. Is psychopathy a real psychiatric concept or just a popular word? Yes, it's a real psychiatric concept. There's a lot written about psychopathy. Now it is known in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual written by the American Psychiatric Association as antisocial personality disorder, but it is still psychopathy. How would you suggest ending abusive cycles to further generations? Evolution of consciousness through personal will. Scene and close. Wash hands, wash hands, wash hands. Could it be that an NPD has to do with the soul? What is that? That they are born as a narcissist and that it is not caused by a trauma? I don't know that I would agree that it's anything to do with the soul. If you're asking whether there's a genetic component, it's highly likely that there's a genetic component, but I think it's a lazy, it's a very lazy, it's a lazy explanation. It's a lazy explanation. I think it's clear that it's not just that. There's a certain type of abuse that has to play out. For narcissistic personality disorder is an odd thing to develop, to be perfectly honest with you. And it requires quite odd circumstances to take place. It's not that it doesn't happen, it does. I don't think full-blown narcissistic personality disorder takes place at the levels that some far more credentialed experts in the field claim it does. I think it's still quite rare. Real NPD, I would say, is still, maximum. It's 3 to 5% of the population. But I've heard some people say, oh no, we're talking about 30 to 40% of the population. I mean, that's just not true. And if it were true, society would have collapsed 10 years ago. If we were even approximating those levels, society would have long, 10, 15 years ago, it would have already collapsed. No, I don't think they're born. I think that there is pretty convincing evidence that psychopaths are born, but that's not my field. I don't know enough about the kind of neuropsychology, evolutionary psychology. I haven't read enough. It's not. It doesn't particularly interest me. I'm not that guy. But I'm pretty sure that the larger part of narcissistic personality disorder is environmental, is trauma based. I can ask my dear friend, Mr. Professor Ed Dutton, about that, and he probably will know the specific statistic for that based on twin studies. I'm looking for question marks here, kids. Interesting perspective, but society is collapsing. No, slow motion, yes. Slow motion it is. Well, collapsing, regressing for sure. Regressing for sure. We're no longer in a state of progress. We haven't been in a state of progress for a while. My humble opinion. Collapsing, probably. Society and civilization as we know it, as we have known it, just is not. It's just not sustainable. Like everyone should find peace. Take solace in your relationship with God. Take refuge in the Lord. Find peace within yourself. How can we make mental health professionals? Make them! Oh, I love making mental health professionals do things. It's my favorite. Oh, sorry. How can we make mental health professionals understand narcissistic abuse? We put them in the camp. You will understand. You will. How can they support us if they don't understand our trauma from abuse? Many mental health professionals do, but I hear you. It's not all. It's not all. There's a lot of good people out there, and they're updating their own understanding. Like I have psychiatrists, psychotherapists, and counselors who I'm in regular contact with, who want to help me make my work a little bit more academic, a little bit more acceptable to the fields and circles that they're in, who are genuinely interested in sort of spreading awareness of this. So there are good people out there, but you have your horror stories. People here do. I have my own horror story. I have a horror story of a woman. I went through a counseling directory. She said she specifically specialized in narcissistic personality disorder. We did 3 sessions, and on the 3rd session, I started talking about gaslighting and in-house stalking. And she's like, you keep using these jargon terms. What do they mean? And I was like, do you want me to tell you, a qualified therapist who specializes? This is a real conversation. It took place on Skype. It wasn't face-to-face. This is 2016 when I was living in London, and I was applying to do a master's degree in psychoanalytic theory at the University of Central London. So I remember it very well. I remember where I was in the room when this happened. I couldn't fucking believe it. Do you want me to tell you, a psychotherapist who advertises, psychotherapist, not a counselor, who advertises that she's a specialist in narcissistic personality disorder, what gaslighting is? And she said, are you sure it exists? It's like a meme from TikTok. It's like a funny TikTok video. And I said, I don't know. I think I said something like, I don't know why you would say that to me. We have agreed that we're doing these sessions because you're helping me to overcome narcissistic abuse at the hands of my ex-girlfriend. This is how, because the first time we spoke to each other, we didn't do a session. I interviewed her to make sure she was a good fit, and I thought she was. And she said, yes, Richard, but then you also have to accept that narcissistic personality disorder doesn't exist. And I was like, God, are you kidding me? Are you joking? I wish I'd screen recorded it. I really do. I really do. So people have their horror stories. I have mine. I don't know what this woman, she was also smoking during sessions. And I actually spoke to an ex-girlfriend of mine the other day. And she said, I told this story and I was like, could you believe that the psychotherapist said this to me, that she wanted me to explain what gaslighting was? And she said that my ex-girlfriend hadn't been narcissistically abusing me because there's no such thing as narcissistic abuse and no such thing as narcissistic personality disorder. I said, your therapist was smoking? She said, my therapist used to come on in a dressing gown, like a silk dressing gown and pajamas and smoke and charge 100 quid an hour to do that on Zoom. I was like, what the? So, okay, we all have our horror stories. Okay, but there are many, many, many good people out there who are really, really trying to help. They're really trying to help. And if I want to position myself sort of between working mental health professionals, counselors, and psychotherapists who are seeing clients daily, and a client base who's hungry for their help, there has to be some kind of a quality control procedure. I am working on that right now with my sister. She's because she's also been in therapy over the years. She was raised in a similar household to the one I was, oddly enough. And so we're going to come up with something. We're going to try and find a solution for that. But there are therapists who are just like, well, I don't know what to do. I'm not trained for what this is. There just is no training for this. And they're very sincere. I have therapists who come to my stupid seminars. I'm a YouTuber. I used to be a taxi driver. And then like psychiatrists and psychotherapists sit down, they pay the money, they sit down and they take notes while I say stuff about narcissistic abuse. And I'm like, this is weird. I used to ferry people around Birkenhead, Liscard, Rock Ferry, New Ferry for 60 quid a day. And now I do this. But like, we're still in the realm of the unknown. So they'll take it from wherever they can get it. Why do so many people think that there is no such thing as free will? Do they? I don't know. How dare they? Captain Snackbeard. Anyone who uses the word wokeism to dismiss racism is someone who loves all the nice things that racism gives them. That's not a question, dude. That's a statement. You go in timeout because you're naughty. You've been so bad. Go in timeout with your pants down. Okay. Questions. I'll do 2 more questions and then we'll go. Is the sky blue? There's a thing I want to do on Instagram to prove that people will argue about absolutely anything. And I was going to just put like a picture of the sky and write the sky is blue. And then just watch people go demented in the comments, just raging at each other. Actually, of course, scientifically, it isn't blue, but who cares? And the other one is water is wet. And then there'll be people who are like, actually, scientific. Yeah. Yes, I hear you. Tasha Starling. I see you. I hear you. That sounds like she was gaslighting you. Yeah. So I gaslighted. I could gaslight her. I'd be like, why are you asking me that? I could pretend that I was the therapist the whole time and be like, why would you as a client want to ask me that question. What do you get from that? And how does it make you feel? And we'll just keep gaslighting each other and see whose head bursts first. I genuinely don't think there's any mental health professional out there that can properly address the level of trauma experience unless they've had multiple personal experiences themselves. I disagree. I don't think an MMA coach needs to have been a great fighter themselves to teach MMA. I don't think a therapist needs to have experienced narcissistic abuse to help you to come through from narcissistic abuse. And I don't think everybody who's experienced narcissistic abuse makes a great coach either. But I understand the strong desire to connect with somebody who's had the visceral, first-hand subjective experience of what you have had. I understand that. I have 2 therapists that I recommend, and neither of them say they've had significant narcissistic abuse in their lives, but they're very, very good. They're very, very good. $100 an hour? No, he was £100 an hour, which is like $160 an hour. We were chatting at the time, and she was like, "Oh, I was in therapy today. My therapist said this. My therapist said that." And it's only now, 3 years later, that she told me her therapist was in his fucking gym jams the whole time and smoking. And she said, "Is that not okay?" And I was like, if I had a coach or a therapist who did that while they were working for me, they would be very fired very, very quickly. I even said, because I saw screen caps, pictures of my coaches working with some clients, and some of the clients were lying down during coaching sessions, and I was like, and eating, and I was like, don't let your clients do that. And they went, "Oh no, it's okay." They find it comforting. I wouldn't coach. I would just, when I used to coach people, I just switched off the session. If somebody was eating, I've just turned off the session. I was going, "I'm going now. If you're not ready to work, I'm not going to work with you. I've got better stuff to do. I'll go to the gym before my next client," and just switch off. You show up on time. You can have a glass of water next to you and some tissues. You're not eating. You're not moving around the house doing your washing. You sit up and you talk to me. The end. And both the client and the patient should have boundaries and respect for the process. Because if you don't, what are you doing? It's not your mate. You're not having a chat with your mom about a fight that you had with your girlfriend. You've got to respect the process. You've got to respect the therapist, and the therapist should respect the client. There should be more standards in these things, you know. Where are you finding these therapists? So my procedure that I advise anybody to do is to find a counseling or psychotherapy directory in your country or state. When you find these wonderful directories that everybody has now, you can ask for a type of therapy and what the therapist specializes in. You can specify whether you want a man or a woman. You can specify whether they're into CBT, NLP, DBT, whatever, and you can find the right therapists for you. I suggest you find your top 5 favorites. You speak to the top 5, you send them an email, and you say, "Before I sign up for therapy with you, can we do a chat on Skype or Zoom for 10 minutes to see if we have good rapport?" Do a chat or on Skype or Zoom, have a little chat with them, see if you get on with them, choose your top 2, and then go to work with whoever your favorite one was. How can a narcissist not harm the people they believe they love? It's highly likely they'll harm the people they believe they love. One more. Melanie asks, "You prefer someone abusive to someone who's appreciating you genuinely?" I was half joking. It's not that simple. I am more likely to, my subjective experience is that I just find myself with abusive women. I don't know, but unconsciously I'm selecting for asymmetric and unfair dynamics inside of relationships, and that is what I'm unconsciously attracted to. Of course, I would never consciously say, "No, give me somebody abusive over somebody who's appreciating me genuinely." These are unconscious drives. So through therapy, I have to learn to understand when somebody's appreciating me genuinely, the feeling of safety that I get with that I, as a human animal, as a central nervous system that's entrained over time, I don't associate peace and safety to passion, to romantic interest, to girlfriend, boyfriend, relationship dynamics, even to lust, or I don't have those associations there. I have to, if I wanted to be in a relationship again, I have to learn them. What do you suggest to look for in a therapist for dealing with narcissistic trauma? Just that you get on with them, that you like them. That you like them is a really, really good start, because, you know, you want to trust them, because eventually in the therapeutic process, you will be psychologically naked before them. You will tell them everything, I hope, and be truly honest with them. And then they can really help you, because if you're not being honest with your therapist, they can't really help you. Well, there we go. 2 hours and 15 minutes. I have missed talking to you all, my dears. I truly have. It's been a very busy month or so whilst things are getting resolved. I hope that you had a pleasant Christmas and a nice New Year. And I hope that 2024 is a good year for all of you. I sincerely do. I always say thank you for your time and your attention at the end of these videos. That is because your time and your attention have magical properties. And these are some of the most precious resources that you have. And if you spend them on me, then I'm very, very grateful for that. Thank you for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.